What's up, everybody? Great to see you guys. I hope you had an awesome 4th of July and 4th of July weekend. Hope you got to spend some time with your family. If you're near water, out on the water, barbecuing, cooking it up, fireworks, whatever your thing is. We were pretty low key. We were hanging out down in the low country, had a great time, had some great food. You guys will see that. I've got content throughout this week. It's coming. So how do you celebrate 4th of July? We didn't do burgers. We didn't do hot dogs. We did some other seafood. I have to take advantage when I'm down in Charleston, and we make it happen. But I'd love to hear what you guys do over the weekend and over the celebration of 4th of July. And what's your staple? What's your go-to? Drop it in the comments. We'd love to kind of hear that and see what everybody does. We are slowly but surely wrapping up summer. It's crazy to think, just quite honestly, how fast it has gone by. We've got 2 guests left for our summer series. These have been so much fun. We appreciate you guys tuning in and hope you learn some cool stuff, learn about some people that maybe you haven't, or maybe others that you follow along as well as us in the journey of college football, and just hearing a little bit more of their stories. But today, my man, Bud Elliott, is going to join us, and love Bud's work. He does an amazing job over on Cover 3 podcast, also with 24/7 and the things that they do there, and has his own podcast, a little bit more Florida State flavor, which is always fun. So really grateful for his time. He is a busy dude. You see it. We'll talk about it here. He was at the Elite 11. He's all over the place. Has a couple of young kids that we were talking about. So grateful for his time. Grateful to talk about the ACC and just his thoughts on the upcoming season. We jump into a lot of different things, and I think it's really going to pique the interest of a lot of people. So without further ado, quickly, a message from our friends over at Ingles, and then we'll get to our great interview here.
It's time to discover the convenience and time savings of contact-free pickup with Ingles Curbside. Just visit shop.ingles-markets.com or download the app. And your Ingles personal shopper gets to work with specialized training on how to select the freshest items for a pre-scheduled pickup. They'll even text you with updates. You pull up to a designated space and your personal shopper delivers your items right to your vehicle. Fresh, fast, and affordable. It's all in the bag. Ingles. Low prices. Love the savings.
All right, Bud Elliott joining us here on the podcast today. We've been excited about this one, Bud. We've been following your work with Cover 3, the Nolecast. Obviously, we know you know everything FSU, but we're going to dive into the entire ACC today, so we're pumped. I did say, though, Bud, you were worrying me a bit because you were talking about your 2 boys and some scraps that perhaps happen. And so the 2-boy household, it gives me a little, like, anxiety if that ever happens to me.
It's not easy. Like I feel for my wife. I mean, that stay-at-home mom thing is a full-time job because it's like stay-at-home mom plus referee.
Yes,
for sure. And she's like, hey, we fight on the ground. We don't jump off things onto each other, and we don't hit each other in the face. You know, other than that, we're pretty much like 5 and 2, just not going to hurt each other too bad if they're just scrapping on the ground without face shots.
There you go.
Those are definitely, I think.
Yeah. Those are definitely rules to live by there, and I can definitely attest to that with my little brother and things that we used to do. So if we would have had that, maybe less injuries, maybe less hospital visits. Who knows? But it's a good start.
Hit that deductible early in the year, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. I guess it's a good thing. You time it up. Dad said we could jump off the couch. I don't know why today was different than all other days. But man, we're going to be all over the place today. I was watching y'all's episode on Cover 3 about you breaking down the college football game coming out, 25. I can't wait to see it. You've played it. You were very adamant. I don't want you to dive into 20-minute episode like you did there. You guys can go watch more of a breakdown. But just overall, what was the biggest takeaway from that trip and that visit to EA Sports?
So I've known a lot of those EA guys for a while, and they were pretty adamant, like, this is not a Madden reskin, and like they were right. Like it is a real different game than Madden. Their kind of mentality was that everybody's team is somebody's favorite team. So we really need to effort to get all the details, right for everybody. So, I mean, I think Clemson sent 10,000 photos or something, like, and they labeled like the location from which each one was shot. Like that level of detail gone in. And, to many places they're able to send a crew and, do all the like 360-degree scans. And, they like built a hill in Vancouver during COVID to do the mocap for Clemson, right? Like,
wow.
like they showed us all the motion capture stuff they were doing, which is pretty cool. Like the right song plays at the right time, at least to the best of their abilities, and it just kind of makes sense. Fowler for ESPN was super pumped to do it because he wasn't contractually allowed to be in it last time.
Wow.
This time his deal, I guess, is different, so he's allowed to be in there, and he said he spent like 140 hours of recording or something insane. I was like, that's a ton, man.
Yeah.
So I just think like the realness, and I think they try to capture like what makes college special. They said it's 134 different playbooks, which is wild. And there's a lot of schemes in college you just won't ever see in the NFL. It's like, how do you replicate that? Like, how do you make the variations in hash mark alignment matter? Because like in college, like that matters a ton for your defense.
Sure.
So
sure.
I'm really excited to like get into it more, but it was cool to go play it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so fun. I can't wait. So July 19th, I believe it comes out. How about just overall gameplay? Sorry, I'm super nerding out, right? KG's like, who is this guy? What are you talking about? How was gameplay? I mean, I guess Madden is what we have, right? Or 14 if you want to go way back. I mean, is it smoother, slow? I mean, what's the vibe? It's
a lot smoother. I think that the big things are the run game makes sense. Like if you run outside zone like you're running power, it's probably not going to work. Like you actually have to run the run schemes like they're intended to be blocked. Now, granted, like if some guy gets blown up, you got to be able to be good on the sticks to make it work. But I think there's actually more strategy in running the ball. But if you do it right, I think it's largely pretty effective. The read option stuff is not quite the cheat code that it used to be. Also, they switched up the defaults. So now pull is the button you press. It used to be you pulled the hand off, but like that's actually not how we run it, right? Like it's like the default should be give, and you pull is the decision.
Yeah.
And so that they change the buttons up to reflect that. Also, you can't just put like a million 5-star freshmen with 90 speed in and expect to win, because for some of these guys, the routes won't show up. Right? They're like, I'm a freshman.
What do you mean it won't show up? They forget the route.
Like you'll have to remember what button this guy was because his icon won't be there, or like he may not run his route. Yeah, like so the age of the player matters a lot too. In this, which it does in regular college. Awesome. Like 18-year-olds make mistakes, a lot of them.
Wow.
So it's pretty detailed.
Dang.
But they've had 10 years to work on it, so like it better be right. Like
better be good.
Yeah.
See, I'm sure I don't get into video games, but this does sound really cool. I'm just loyal.
KG, this is just studying. This is just good studying. You're not playing a game.
No, and the way y'all are talking about it, I can definitely see that. But Mac, I'm just loyal to the 2014 game because I want Eric McLean as my right guard when I'm playing with Clemson.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I want. My superstar.
That's true.
For the Clemson Tigers. True. But we'll get to Clemson. But let's start with Florida State. Let's start with the defending ACC champions. And I was watching your summer school episode on Florida State. I am so fascinated to see how this DJU scheme looks, because we saw a lot of it firsthand at Clemson. And then, of course, he goes out west and he's back. We know he's got arm talent for days. The deep ball it seems like he can flick his wrist and that thing can go, 50, 60 yards. How do you feel like offensively Florida State will look different with DJU at quarterback?
I think it'll look a lot different and probably more similar to what you saw Norvell running in like his second to last year at Memphis when he had a couple backs, make the NFL. He had a guy who could check it deep, but there was some erratic play there. I mean, DJ, I think if you're Florida State, and this is kind of the vibe I picked up, is like he is what they thought he would be, which is both a good and bad thing. Like if he was a whole lot better than you thought he'd be, like, okay, cool, now you're really cooking. But I think what you didn't want to have happen is him get in there and then you're like, oh, damn, like this guy can't play. Like they think they can win with him, maybe not because of him, right? Like there's kind of like win with quarterbacks and win because of quarterbacks. And I think, Travis at his best was definitely a win because of quarterback. I think DJ is sort of a win with quarterback. And also like the receiving core, I think took a big step back, both in terms of like skill and also how proven the production is when you lose Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson. I mean, when those guys were healthy, that was a really difficult thing to stop. So I think it's going to be a lot more run game. This is probably the best offensive line they've had since like 2014. They're all like 22, 23-year-old dudes for the most part. And I know they feel good about that. They really like the backfield with those guys. So I don't think they're going to throw the ball 35 times a game. Right? It's probably limited, a lot of run, screens, play action shots deep down the field, stuff that is low chance for. I mean, you may throw a pick, but probably not a pick six if you're throwing it 50 yards down the field. So try to use his arm strength. A lot of like the clear. He throws that dig pretty well. Just zip it in there. Off the play action. you can kind of target all areas of the field, I guess, when you have his arm strength. But I think you have to understand, like, the guy's going to have just some, oh my God, misses. Like, he misses layups, and that's just what he is. So unless they can get that fixed, and I don't think they took him as a reclamation project. Just I think they're just like, cool, like, guy's an old dude. We know what he is. You know, he came in. I think he's like under 240 now, so he's looks like he's in decent
little
shape.
Cinco or little Quattro. It's not even Cinco anymore. Excuse me.
I saw some photos of him on the visit, and I was like, and then now I'm like, okay, yeah, like the Tallahassee Heat get you slimmed down pretty quick. So
True,
you know,
true.
But I think they'll rely on their defense quite a bit and not ask him to be the dude who like goes out and wins you games.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you could argue, tell me if you disagree, bud. I would say 2 years ago, Jordan Travis was more the guy you win with him. I thought last year it was more, he managed the game a lot more. He had so much skill around him. So you can kind of take that if you will. But I think, bringing back Toafili, bringing in some running back transfers, who are the pass catchers going to be? I know you said maybe not as much passing, and I agree. But who do you think emerges there?
So they took Malik Benson from Alabama, who had, we knew he had elite speed coming out of junior college. He was our number one JUCO kid on 24/7 Sports, but he had a real rough year with Alabama. He also had one of the higher like uncatchable target rates. So, Milroe also had some accuracy issues at times last year for the Tide. I think that's why you saw Isaiah Bond bounce for Texas, right? Just a little more friendly offense to catch passes in. So they really like what they have in him. He got hurt at the end of the spring game, and they expect him to be fine for the season. And then Hakeem Williams, who terrible spring when he came in, like looked like he was out of shape, rounded into form nicely, was getting like meaningful reps when they were losing to Duke, and when Keon was already dinged up, and Johnny got I don't know if concussed, but on it certainly looked like a headshot, right? So whatever. But he was out, so they had to put in Hakeem, and he caught pivotal third downs in that game as they made the comeback there against Duke. Then he got hurt, missed the rest of the year, kind of real up and down spring. So we'll see what he is, but he'll probably make attention there. They love this Jalen Lucas kid they got as sort of a Swiss Army knife from Indiana. He's even on a team that has really good speed. He's a different level of speed than everybody else. So I would expect a lot of gadget stuff to him just to try to, in an offense that's probably going to be fits and spurts at times. I would say a lot of just let's try to get the ball in this guy's hands, see what he can do.
Right.
And then they got a bunch of old dudes, Kentron Portier, Williamson, and those guys. We'll see if maybe it finally clicks for one of those dudes. But they didn't attack that in the spring portal window, so maybe they actually like this receiving core a little better than I do. I don't know. We'll see.
Right. It is going to be interesting, and I think it's also just one of those things when you have a new quarterback coming in, it's a little bit more of maybe a question mark or a cause for concern, but we'll see. I certainly think that if there's a guy to get the most out of DJ, Coach Norvell is certainly that guy. And I think another interesting thing is just going to be that helmet, communication, coach to player. How much can he just calm him down or give him a little tidbit and then really get that going? Because I think we've heard that he's going to be the one talking into the quarterback's helmet there. You mentioned that defense, and you mentioned winning with that defense. This secondary looks like the secondaries I played against. Dogs, monsters, NFL-type level talent. Is that the strength, you think, of this team and specifically the defense?
So I would say during spring, a lot of us were like, man, AZ Thomas might be the best player on this team.
Right.
And I was surprised at Norvell. He went on, quarterback played for Alabama. He does SC Network stuff now.
McElroy.
He went on McElroy's show, and he just kind of flat out said, he's like, yeah, AZ Thomas has a chance to be our best player. Oh, okay, so we're just going to acknowledge
Confirmed.
this. Yeah, like what we saw. And that kind of makes sense. Like there's NFL bloodlines there. His brother was a good player for Georgia Tech and played for, I believe, the Rams for a while. And, he just seems to really have emerged and become a bully. But I wouldn't lose sight of the fact that, Fentrell Cypress, who they got from Virginia last year and was like a solid player for them, but wasn't dominant.
Right.
Got exposed in some of the run fits at times. He had a pretty nice spring as well. And so I do think they probably have the best corner combo in the SEC, and they're over the moon with what they got in Earl Little Jr. To come in and play the slot. So much so that Greedy Vance went and got a bag from USC and
right.
Awesome, to his credit. But I don't think he was going to start. I think Greedy Vance left in part because he lost his spot to Earl Little Jr., who was playing for Alabama. So they like that. Secondary, they love Shaheem Brown at safety. And on the back end, it's either going to be Brown, who they got as a transfer from Miami, who was really rough last year, but it's a different role they're asking him to play. Or Amarion Cooper, who started out at FSU, had a nice sophomore year. His high school coach left to become Colorado's director of high school relations, and he transferred out there for a year. Had some kind of up and down moments, but he knows the system. So
yeah, he's back.
I don't know. If your worst spot is some 22-year-old guy that's played for you before, it's probably okay, you know?
Yeah, I would agree. I think I'm curious big picture here, bud, and I know you have the pulse of the Noles and kind of what fans expect, but what should expectations be for this season? Now, and I don't think anybody really knows with their own personal teams because it's like the playoffs bigger now. I mean, to say this is a playoff team is a different term now, but what would you say or should be expectations for Florida State this year?
I think if they're not like in playoff contention deep into November, I think fans would be pretty disappointed. With where they are, they have a really good collective. Obviously, it's a pretty veteran team overall. I think, you have Notre Dame can run with you and physically is there. Clemson, Miami, I guess in theory the Gators because they do recruit at that level. But I mean, are you to a point where the other 7 games you just handle your business? You may have some ceiling questions with this ball club, but is your floor so established because you're able to pick through the portal and now you have a reputation of, hey, if I go to Florida State in the portal, I'm likely going to succeed because of what they've done there.
Yeah.
Do you have 7 auto wins? We had Brendan Sonnone on from Knowles 247. He's like, honestly, they should have 7 easy wins. And that's risky because you're kind of labeling like SMU and Georgia Tech easy wins, but there is some chance that there's like 7 teams on the schedule that just can't block them.
Yeah. And I think that matters, right? Like both lines of scrimmage, you bring up the offensive line. We know what the defensive line is going to be. Some veteran guys, a transfer in, coming home in Jones Jr. there that I think is going to be an absolute ball player. We'll see. I think it's hard for me to sit here and say today, repeat. They're going to repeat. They're going back-to-back. They'll be in the playoff just because I think the ACC in general is raising, its core. And let's move on to another team here that I think is one of those teams that's really going to make a push in NC State, a team that, man, they got a real shot here. I think that offense is going to be extremely good. Grayson McCall coming in. I don't think enough people are giving him credit of being an elite player, over 10,000 yards passing, over 88 touchdowns, and just being a guy that it's a known commodity. We know what he is. It's not a if you bring him here, can he do this and that? And quite frankly, I think the defense gets the benefit of the doubt because of Tony Gibson, one of the best, if not the best right now in the country and what he does. So when I have all those things and I add in the schedule, man, that I'm looking at, and again, you just said what you said about them. I think 10-2 is like right there. Like just take it. Just go take it. And that should be pretty low on the spectrum there with maybe losing to Clemson, maybe losing to Tennessee. Are you as high on the Wolfpack as maybe I am?
I think I'm pretty high on them. I mean, a lot of folks I know bet them to win the league, but when their number was 18-1, 20-1. I mean, quarterback was such a mess for them last year. Just a return to competency. It would be a real step forward. I think receiving core likely gets a lot better. You kept Concepcion when a lot of teams were trying to tamper there. Noah Rogers didn't do anything at Ohio State, but it's hard to crack that lineup, obviously. So I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt on maybe being a nice year 2 guy. The tight end they got from UConn, they're like over the moon about. So
Freak show.
Jolly, whatever his name is, he did look pretty good. Can they run the ball? Can they push people around? This is the one thing in NC State I don't get, man. How do your guys on defense look this freaking jacked year after year? And that strength program is awesome. And they're I'm not saying they're soft on the O-line, but they don't push people around. They don't move people. So now with the real threat of the passing game, can that work? Because if that works, then I think you're cooking with gas. I think the defense has to take somewhat of a step back, but I have a lot of faith in Tony Gibson that it doesn't take a big step back.
That's the question. And Mac knows I've been saying that since our podcast started. I've been saying that about NC State. Even those great Devin Leary teams with those really old wide receivers, the team that beat Clemson for the first time in forever in Raleigh. And they won, but they still lost games down the stretch that season because they couldn't run it. Now, we did talk to Dave Doran. That'll come out in August. And Mac and I left that conversation thinking he's confident. And he even said, he's like, we haven't run the ball like we should. And it felt like something had flipped for them in that regard. So I'll put that out there. We'll see if it changes. But I agree with you, Bud. And I think for NC State, they've been able to do some damage in the portal, get some guys that maybe came down to NC State and someone else, and then they come back. I think Smothers, the running backs, come back from Oklahoma.
Yeah.
The Tennessee game, though, to me is going to say a lot. I think that's just the reality. I mean, we saw last year the ACC really helped itself with some of those non-conference games. It didn't end up helping Florida State like it should have at the end. But how important is that Tennessee game? Like, is it just one game, or is that a massive game for NC State when it comes to their reputation, playoff, everything?
I think it's pretty important for NC State and for the league. Maybe more important for the league, right? Like,
yeah.
NC State hasn't won the league or even really played for the league, if I can recall, like in a long time.
No.
So, like, even getting there, like to the AC title game, would be a big one. So if you lose that, it doesn't hinder your chance of going to the AC title game or winning it. I mean, look, there's some chance that Nico could be the best player in the country for Tennessee. Like, that is a potential outcome that doesn't seem insane. Like, I don't know if it's likely, but it's there. If that happens, all right, fine, tip your cap. But if he's like not that, if he's a little bit off, if he's just still kind of feeling his way into the starting role, that's a game NC State can win. So I'm really excited to watch that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
me too.
But it seems like, in a neutral site, I'm sure both fan groups going to fill that up. You hope it's 50-50, but it could be interesting to see which way does that go. But also kind of what you just mentioned there of this young man is going into his first year as a starter. Now, I know he had that game, in the bowl game. I believe that was Iowa, where they just, ran the ball at will on those guys. I don't think Iowa scored. But, when you look at okay, you're getting him early. You have this defense in Tony Gibson that they're going to be creative. They're going to try to confuse him. Do you almost lean more into that? Or do you just, are who you are defensively?
So the one issue I'm not sure how to like kind of game out here. I like how Gibson blitzes from everywhere.
Yes.
Right. But Tennessee spreads you out so far that you kind of have to tip where you're coming from, because like they're spitting on the sidelines as they coach their receiver. That's kind of the term they use. Like, it's hard to cat blitz from the sideline. Like, you just don't get there in time. So I'm very interested to see what strategy Tony Gibson uses in terms of creating pressure, because usually, like, I don't know if anybody in the conference gets more unblocked guys, free runners at the quarterback, than NC State does. But from distance, I don't know. We'll kind of see how that plays. I'm trying to think, has he played like a veer and shoot style team before?
I mean, it's
because when they played
not
USF,
to that
it was
extent,
2 years ago, right?
Not to that extent that Tennessee does.
Because like USF runs it now, but they weren't running it 2 years ago when NC State played it. Maybe they have, but like not that I can remember.
Yeah, and I think part of it too, though, is outside of just blatantly putting yourself at a disadvantage. I mean, it's almost I've seen defensive coordinators many times say, "Okay, great, you're doing what you're doing. You're going to play to what we do. You're going to have to make adjustments because you have those guys spread out. We're going to get there faster than you can, turn it and rip it. It is going to be a fantastic chess match. I mean, I think that, again, we're talking about a lot of underrated chip on the shoulder type things with NC State. I think that game has a shot to be just massive, man, and implications and just views that are going to be on it. KG, it's going to be really fun.
If they win that, just because, like you
your
said,
boy's
Matt,
going to be screaming from the rooftops. Just get ready.
the schedule post Clemson is like,
yeah.
I mean, you should win pretty much every game there. Let's get to the team that I feel like most national people are probably talking about, or at least are in the conversation. And frankly, Bud, the hype on this team is making me uncomfortable. Is making me physically uncomfortable. I don't know how to handle it because it's Miami. And Miami, speaking of never winning the ACC, Miami's never won the ACC. And we're talking about them as, a team that on paper, they without a doubt should be in the discussion. Give me your overall thoughts on where we are with this Miami hype.
Probably the most talented roster in the ACC.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
And one of the easiest schedules for sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Very manageable.
You get Florida State, but you don't get Clemson. I don't have it in front of me. I think are they at Louisville on a Friday?
No Friday, but they are at Louisville.
And they get Vatek, I think, too, at home.
They do. That's on not on a Saturday. That's on a Friday.
But like they get to play a lot of the teams that they should overwhelm,
right?
Talent-wise. I think the question is just, does it click, and how soon, does it click? Like that's a game, that opening weekend game in my state is going to be anxiety bowl because like Florida and Miami both expect to win that, and it means a lot more to the loser than it does the winner. I think in terms of like, it's like cool, yeah, you beat them, whatever. Like they're an ACC team, yeah, they're a team whose Vegas win total is 4.5. Like no credit given to the winner, but if you lose that one, the fan base is going to be pretty hot. I do think Cam Ward is a real upgrade for them. And I think it's important to kind of baseline like what they had in Van Dyke. And I don't think the reports out of Wisconsin on Van Dyke are good at all. So it really makes me think like, okay, it wasn't Miami screwing up Van Dyke. Van Dyke may just be cooked, right? I don't like to say that to a college kid, but like maybe he's just not the goods. And I think we have a pretty good handle that Cam Ward is at least good and maybe really good. I know we had Ryan Wilson on Cover 3, our podcast, and he's our NFL guy for CBS. And there was like no quarterback pick between round 2 and pick 150. And he's like, Cam Ward was probably that guy. Like he was probably the dude who was going to go late 3rd, early 4th and would have filled that void. So if Miami clicks, like they probably, if we knew they were going to click, they should be the ACC favorite given the schedule. Right. But we don't know they're going to click. They also at times do some really wild stuff and lose games, which, for all the heck we want to give Dabo for not using the portal, they don't do a lot of that. Neither do the guys in Tallahassee. So, also the center position, like Matt Lee, he was kind of an ass kicker last year and and cared. And Carpenter's a much quieter kid. So I don't know, is the rest of that line grown up enough around him to where they're okay having a little bit less of a leadership role from center, or maybe the quarterback provides it. It's possible.
And really, to me, I'm glad you brought that up right when you did, because that to me is the biggest difference. Is obviously Cam Ward. You have such a dynamic guy that we think can take it to another level, given the talent around him, given the opportunity, things of that nature. But then the second piece that is maybe bigger physically is that offensive line. They have not had that. What I think this offensive line can be, and obviously it's led by Francis Maui-Noah, but I think Sampson's going to come in and be a monster. I think that Jalen Rivers is already a bona fide monster. And you look at, the 2-3 other guys that they might be rotating in that end up being the starters. I mean, I think there's a real shot for these guys to be that Mario Cristobal. We're going to line up and we're just going to bulldoze you. We're just going to go right over you because we love the running backs we have. We love what we can do. And we think this quarterback's electric enough. So to me, man, that line of scrimmage piece is the differentiator. And it's the thing that they have just not had, quite frankly, in these last handful of years.
And they got to get secondary. I mean, you cannot bust as much as they did last year. Like that was
weird because they have those. UNC you have an All-American and you have James Williams, who we all thought was going to eventually be that guy. They just never got there.
Yeah.
So we'll see. It's going to be interesting. What do you think about this defensive line too, man? Because I think that was a position probably as soon as the season ended. I'm like, I don't know if this is going to be good. And then they add all these pieces in the portal, 3 5-star freshmen that are probably going to play right away. And then Ruben Bain switches to a single digit. I just imagine he's going to be a superhero now.
Bain is like so similar. Who is the guy that played like stand-up in for South Carolina and then played for the Chargers forever?
Melvin Ingram.
Yes. That's kind of that's kind of my Bain
great comp. That was my comp last year.
They're kind of sawed off.
Yes.
The motor's like 110% all the time. They're heavy hands, very annoying to block. Like always plays low because they're so, be able to move that guy around like a chess piece is really nice. And I think they have great length at the other end spots. Defensive interior, I'm good with it. Like, I don't know if it's amazing, but I think it's at least decent. And then if Messidor is back and healthy, like that's a guy that, let's go back 3 years now, Mountaineers were pretty pissed to lose him.
Right.
Like that was one of those like portal, tampering allegation, all this stuff. But like they were pissed for a reason because the guy can really play if he's healthy. So if he's right, I like their linebacking core a whole lot with Francis' brother, and then obviously Wesley Basaint. Like that's a pretty nasty defense, and I agree with you. I think the front could be really good.
Mm-hmm.
I think the good news for Miami, similar to FSU 2 years ago, is that they did take some steps last year.
Yeah.
They beat A&M, a team that, ended up not being very good, but still they did it. They beat Clemson, which they hadn't done in forever. So maybe you're not skipping a bunch of steps to get to perhaps 10 wins this year. Or maybe more. Let's talk about Clemson, because that's the other, Mac and I, we have our pulse our finger on the pulse of Clemson. And I think Clemson fans are just at a point where, can we please stop talking about the portal? Can we please stop talking about all this? Can we just have some sort of explosive offense? Because that's what Clemson, we know the D-line's always been good, but that's what Clemson built itself on, was great quarterback play, explosiveness, creativity offensively. It hasn't been there. Can Garrett Riley, Klubnik, can it come together, Bud? Like, what's your feeling on this offense?
I think it can. I mean, it's year 2 under Garrett Riley.
Right.
Like, are we really sure that it's just going to look the same as it did last year? Like last year, I thought you had, a new system. It was Cade's first year as like the dedicated starter. You had, I felt like I was just charting different receivers in and out for these dudes every single week. And, we talk about how Clemson doesn't have receivers that look like the guys they used to have. And maybe there's not a Sammy or a Nuke on this team, but I think they still have pretty decent receiver talent. They could just stay on the field. That would be really, really helpful. Studies show if you're on the field,
nice.
you're better
nice
on the trading table. And offensive line, I think, is probably pretty decent in most spots. I have some questions about the depth on the O-line. Like I don't know how many guys. Like, are they 8 deep? Are they 9 deep? Right. Eric probably tell you, better than I can on that. But I think it should take a step forward. And a lot of their best players last year, in part due to injury, were some of their true freshmen who they really hit on. Like, if I'm a Clemson fan, that's kind of what infuriates me the most. It's like, damn it, man, we scout high school really well. Like, look how good we are without taking any transfers.
Yeah.
Like, if you can't tell me there's no holes here who could be improved just by taking a guy that also fits our culture, But the fact that we're talking about them as one of the deserved league favorites without taking any transfers is kind of nuts, right? It speaks to how good they do without that added piece. It's like if you're all draft, no free agency, but they crush it with it.
Yeah, they do. And they do it their way. And, it's just how it's going to be interesting to see when and if that changes and, how it changes. But, I think the offensive thing, it is going to be fascinating just because it's hard to remember that it's year 2, that last year was year 1 for Garrett Riley and, quite frankly, for Cade Klubnik because, there's so much invested and there's so much excitement and all these different things. And then you get there and you're like, oh, okay, this looks like the same thing we just got rid of. What are we doing? And, I think there's something to that. And now you have this full off season. You have all this time, for it to come together. And I agree with you about the wide receivers. And I think the 2 that you're adding maybe can be that T. Higgins, maybe can be that Nuke Hopkins type of player that guess what? Those guys made a big impact very early. So we'll see. We'll be down there in camp. I'll have a much better pulse on who those guys are going to be, what they're going to do. But looking at this defense, Bud, that is a particular area of this team I have zero question about. I think they're going to be one of the best in the country. I think the linebacking core might be the best in the country. But when you add it all up and you see those freshmen that are now sophomores that are juniors, this is a really talented bunch, don't you think?
100%. I think this is probably odds on to be the best defense in the league. You got some pieces to replace in the secondary, but overall, like you got to love what they have up front. Those are some real difference makers. And just getting Tyler going into year 2 that's going to be disruptive in a big time way. Or wait, Woods, the
Peter Woods.
Yeah, excuse me. That's going to be pretty huge. And I agree with you on the backers. And it's a pretty decent conference for linebackers, but we lost some good ones.
Right.
Florida State lost both of theirs. NC State lost to
Peyton
Wilson.
Wilson.
Is a freak. And that's, I don't see why Clemson can't win the league if the offense improves somewhat and the defense just largely holds serve. Like it should be a really good team again.
Yeah, it should. And I want to say I was maybe watching your Clemson summer school or maybe someone else's, but I feel like this schedule specifically before that second open date, so let's just say September and October, is tough. I think it's a make or break early season slate for Clemson. Like it just is. You have Georgia, which look, you can lose to Georgia and be fine. We know that. You beat Georgia, things change a lot. But you have App right after that, which is interesting. And then NC State and Florida State. This is all before October 5th. So that is kind of brutal. I think we're going to learn a lot. And I still think in all this expansion and all this Cal, whatever, that Clemson FSU game is still going to be, to me, the most important game of this ACC slate because one of those teams is going to very much be in the mix. And the fact that game is at FSU, you got the DJU factor. Like, do you think is there a game I'm missing or is that still the it game in this league?
Because I really don't, in my heart of hearts, believe that Wake, Virginia, and Stanford can block Clemson.
Sure.
And, App is pretty plucky in the Sun Belt. I think they're actually the Sun Belt favorite along with Texas
State.
Especially
if Clemson comes off if you get beat by Georgia and then you're going, you know what I mean? Like beat badly, that could be, that's a tough situation.
Agreed. There's a mentality thing there. 3 years ago, or 2 years ago. When was the game that it was in Charlotte and Georgia won it without scoring off its touchdown? It was
DJU's last year, 2 years ago.
Yeah, 2 years ago. Yes, brutal.
I mean, Clemson was a 3-point dog to Georgia in that game.
Yeah.
Now, 2 years later, with the advent of the transfer portal, they're a 15-point underdog. Their high school recruiting really hasn't changed on either side. It's just the ability to patch holes. So, if you're Clemson, and if you go and you lose that game by 3 scores to open up the year, like, does that affect your mentality? I don't think so. It shouldn't. Like, it's a 12-game schedule, right? And with the playoff, if I'm Dabo, if that does happen, and I don't think you're going to get their doors blown off unless the offense just doesn't come to play, because the defense should be good.
Right.
If you're Dabo, you're like, hey, 12-team playoff. We got a chance at redemption. We get better during the season. Like Clemson, by the way, back when they were winning national titles, they always got better during the season. It felt like they went into the lab somewhere between Halloween and Thanksgiving. It's like, oh yeah, we're going to work on this, and this, and then come 14 playoff time, they were a hell of a lot better than they played at times. I agree with you though. Like there is a mentality thing there, but I don't know if App has enough defensively to really give them problems there. So I think it's NC State and Florida State, and nobody else really can block them in that opening stretch. I don't think.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see. I think a lot of it rides obviously with your quarterback, and what can he do? How can he grow? And how can he make that offense run? We'll see. It'll be interesting. Last team that we're really going to specifically jump in on and look at these different things is Virginia Tech, a team that, man, they're returning the most production in college football. You've got your quarterback back that Kyron Jones, I think, can take a real big step here. Talk to his coach and Coach Pry there and the things that he needs to work on. He felt like he has and gotten better at those. Talk about confidence and expectation. Seems like Virginia Tech has a lot going into this year.
So I was out of Elite 11, and there's a lot of like agents out there or guys who are connected to agencies that rep players. And man, they gave Virginia Tech a ton of credit for their retention. They're like, dude, like this school tried to steal this guy and this school tried to steal this guy. And the Hokies just ponied up and kept him home, which also I think speaks to the quality of player returning on this team. I mean, it's one of the more veteran teams in college football. Is Kyron Jones the worst practice player in the history of quarterbacks? Because he couldn't win the job at Baylor based on practice. And like whoever the guy was that the Hokies threw out instead of him, just horrendous.
Wells.
Yeah. Terrible, right? And then like, oh yeah, fine, we'll try this Drones kid since Wells either was terrible or got hurt or whatever it was. But we do see good coaches pick their own quarterback sometimes. I mean, Kyle Whittingham at Utah is a damn good football coach, and like 2 times in his history, he's picked like the clear wrong guy. And it's like remember before they put Rising in. They were losing or lost to like San Diego, a bad San Diego State team the one year in Utah. And it's like, really? Like Utah, this is the guy you have here. And they're like, oh, we have this Cam Rising guy. You want to try him? And like,
let's see what he can do.
Rose Bowl. So like once they threw Drones in there, I felt like it was a very high floor operation because he doesn't take a lot of negative plays and like seems to know what they're doing. Getting all the receivers back and healthy is huge. I think the offensive line returns everybody.
Yeah.
So they should be pretty decent on offense, and defensively, I liked the guys they kept.
Yeah,
I mean that defensive line, I guarantee they had a pony up for, and I think it'll pay dividends. Other big time schools wanted those guys, so that plus the schedule.
Yeah,
I mean, you better not. If you're Florida State, Clemson, or Miami, you better not screw around and lose twice.
Right?
Exactly.
I don't know that the Hokies are losing twice. I mean, what games are they dogs in?
Yeah.
At Miami and. I mean, they're
Clemson.
Dogs at home to Clemson, but not by a lot.
Right.
Like it's not a 10-point spread.
Yeah.
Well, but we got to go win at ODU.
This is the thing.
That
like,
is a challenge.
Are we post ODU? Like I think I'm there. Like where they're we need to be post that level.
Let's hope. Team. I think Virginia Tech fans are begging for it. Let's hope so.
Also, if they somehow lock up the AC title game, they get bye week Duke UVA to get healthy for that thing.
Yeah.
Like I'm not going to disrespect Duke and UVA and say those are 3 bye weeks, but
sure,
it's certainly
it's close. It's pretty close.
What do you want to sub? Like Stanford for Virginia, as far as like the worst 2 teams in the ACC, probably to get ready. So like, they could have this thing locked up just after Halloween.
Yeah, that double bye week. That's another interesting factor in this season. There's so many new factors here, so many interesting things. But outside of the teams we've named, we talked Virginia Tech, Clemson, Miami, NC State, FSU. If there's another team that you think, because the ACC is known to have a little chaos, right? Who's that other team that you think can really be in the mix and in the discussion?
So I thought it was going to be SMU, but then they lost their starting left tackle to Missouri and their starting center to Oklahoma. I'm like, man,
yeah.
When you move up a league, usually you kind of find out pretty quickly the line of scrimmage is where the difference is,
Right.
especially the depth. And I don't think you can lose to, like, both those teams are teams that want to make the playoff, and they're taking your starters. So I'm kind of out on SMU now because of that. If Tyler Shuck is as good as Louisville thinks he is, I think that's the other one to circle, right? Because like they did a lot last year with a guy who he was a gamer, but maybe not the most effective dude.
Yeah.
Florida State ran the Wildcat in the AC title game when what's his name got hurt, basically they didn't think Louisville was going to score.
Right.
So if that quarterback thing for Louisville is that big of an upgrade, I think there's a real chance that maybe they could make some noise.
Yeah.
I think it's a 6-team race if he's that guy.
Yeah. Louisville is kind of my asterisk team that it's just as the days go, I switch someone else in there. I like Syracuse when I start thinking about them and what, I think that operation can be. Carolina, I mean, when I look at Carolina, and I was looking back just on some summer school stuff, and I saw the tweet that you had about the Carolina defensive line. Is it time? Because this is the last one. This is the last year you got for a lot of those guys. Can you get there? All those 5-star, high 4-stars, so much talent. I mean, I think they have one of the best edge rushers in the world, in the Butcher, Kamen Rucker. And just there's so much talent on that team. So that 6th team for me just rotates. It's going to be fascinating to see by the time we come to kickoff and the season start who I kind of lock in there. But, we'll see. It's going to be fun. Who do you think today, brother? I know it's the middle of summer. We got a lot of time here. Who wins the ACC? Who's coming out on top?
Man, I haven't bet any of these, honestly, because I just don't think there's great value in it. Probably Florida State, but again, I don't think it's much of a margin. I mean, I think there's 3 teams that really coin flip, and then there's 3 that if everything breaks right, that's sort of NC State, Virginia Tech, Louisville tier. I'd be shocked if it was not one of those 6.
Right. No, totally agree with that.
I agree, but what holds now? I know what holds me back. I get it. What holds you back on Miami? If they are the best, is it the in-game stuff? Is it just
it's the Florida State degree? It's the Florida State degree.
Stop.
It is the Florida State degree, I think, in part. But I mean, if you're making a model for betting purposes, and you are just using roster strength, then you're betting on Miami every week and losing your ass. You have got to make a negative adjustment for coaching. I'm serious. No, just look at it.
I get you, yeah.
Because otherwise, you'd be valuing them as a top 7, top 8 roster in the country, and they don't play to that. So,
but is this the best roster they've had in a long time?
Oh, I think so, for sure.
Yeah. So it's better than even the last couple of years where we've had hype.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If there was plus 500s out there, I'd be betting Miami for sure. But also, if Miami's good enough to actually keep it together and gel and win the ACC, we need to be thinking bigger in terms of value. We need to be thinking okay, that means you get a bye, and that means that team with all that talent is actually playing like a team. Then maybe they're actually favored in that round 2 game. We need to be thinking national title type future.
Right.
If you think Miami can win the league, you also think Miami could probably, hang with almost everybody out there in the country.
I like that. That's a great point and kind of a great thing to think about if you're a betting man or woman to kind of get that. How about 2 teams in the playoff? I think that the ACC or the SEC has 7 in. The Big Ten has 4 in.
Guaranteed spots, Max.
I'm quick
17.
at math. I think that's all 12. So I don't know if we'll even get 1 there. But what do you think? Is there a realistic shot? And is that the second team in the ACC championship game, or is it that 3rd team that maybe had a head-to-head that actually benefits by not playing in that title game?
So I do think we're going to get 2 ACC teams in. If you look at it, I think you get 1 Big 10 or 1 Big 12 team, unless something weird happens, with a bid thief type situation, to use a basketball term, where maybe you have a 12-0 team that loses to an 8-4 team in the Big 12 title game or something like that. 1 from the G5. I think 3 or 4 from the Big 10. 4 to 5, most likely from the SEC. But I lean more towards 4. I'm not really sure the committee is going to be all that quick to put in an 8-4 or 9-3 type team. Although Greg Sankey wants everybody to believe that everybody's schedule in the SEC is Florida's schedule, when also Missouri's schedule exists, and that's just not very tough at all. But marketing and PR matters quite a bit.
It does.
That's right.
But I don't think that we should be punishing teams for losing in the conference title game if we're going to maintain the importance of conference title games as the cash cow that they are for these leagues.
Right.
Like
right.
they didn't do away with them because they make so much money for the leagues. Well, if that's going to be the case, we can't disincentivize playing in them. Right. So I don't know if the committee's going to explicitly say that, but because we know who kind of runs the committee, like they have to be aware like what their decision might do. Although of course they make decisions that have real implications all the time.
Sure.
But as we saw last year, so yeah, I think we'll get to.
Yeah, I hope you're right. It'd be really fun. What else was really fun was this, man. So grateful for your time. This was a lot of fun. Some great practice for all of us. We're getting close, baby. Kickoff's right here. Grateful for you and grateful for your time, my brother.
Enjoy it, y'all.
All right, guys, there you go. There's Bud. He's getting us ready. And like I said, we are so close to wrapping up this summer kickoff, these summer guests. And then it's media days, which is nuts to think about. We are right here, right now, talking about all that. So thank you, Bud. Thank you for joining us. Guys, thanks for tuning in. We always appreciate your support. And one more thing of note, we have talked to every single ACC head coach, and they're going to be with us for all our preview shows. 17 of them. That's right. We got to get used to that. 17 of these things was a lot of fun. I cannot wait for you guys to hear these conversations with KG and I, diving deep into each and every school with the guy that knows them the best, their head coach. So those are coming. Stay tuned. Mark those calendars. We'll have a schedule kind of release graphic coming out here shortly that you can pinpoint it. If you don't want to listen to all of them, don't be on the lookout, and we'll give you something you can follow along. But all of these have been so great and so much fun. You guys will really like them, no matter if you're a fan of that particular school or not, just to hear the insight and hear the passion and how much these guys put into it, these men, these head coaches, and, of course, players, assistants, and everyone else on the staff. So that's coming soon. Turn the alerts on. Here we go. Just continue to need y'all's help over on YouTube. Subscribe. Leave some comments. I already tried to get you to leave some, but tell us just what you're looking forward to this upcoming year. And, of course, the OGs over on Apple Podcasts. Rate, review, subscribe there as well. We would greatly appreciate that. But until next time, we'll see y'all.